Wow, great story. We are something, aren't we? I mean, I look at us human beings these days and I think, wow, has a finer group of human beings ever decorated the planet than what we are today? And raised in this culture that we're raised in, we're being told that we have to make our mark, be somebody, stand out, be unique, have a brand, impress. We're like animals who urinate to mark our territory. And we insist that the world notice that we are here. We go around laying claim to our space, our turf, our identity, our preferences, our uniquenesses, as if the whole world is meant to revolve around what we think of ourselves. We create our own eye worlds and our own posses and portfolios, and we hoist these out there on the world as if the world should stop and pay attention to us, to understand us and sympathize with us and salute us. In a sense, we act like we're God, creating the world that we want to live in. The problem is, the rest of the world does not get us, doesn't pay attention to us, doesn't understand us. And as a result, when that happens, we sink into our anxieties and loneliness and depressions and funks and moods. Now, let me be quick to say, there are causes of depression other than what I'm talking about today, but I believe one of the causes of depression is rooted in the fact that we are trying to create our own identities and get the whole world to pay attention to them. We create the sandbox we want to live in, but nobody comes to play with us in our sandbox. So we feel isolated and neglected and lonely and misunderstood. And this, I believe, is a sad misunderstanding of what it means to be human beings. Have you ever felt like that? I know I have. There have been moments in my life where I've thought, oh man, why didn't the world get me better than what it does? And I've come to the conclusion, as a person who has now spent most of my working life on a university campus, life is too hard for us to create ourselves. Let me say that one more time. Life is too hard for us to create ourselves. Identity is too complex for us to make ourselves. Somebody has to tell us who we are until something deep within us finally resonates and says, yes, that's it. Amen. The biggest change in being human across the last century or so is this. We used to find our identity in who we belonged to. Now, we labor to create our unique new identity like the world has never seen before. And the internal price tag for doing this is fracturing and breaking us. One of our greatest needs as human beings is to have people who know us and love us tell us who we are. People are formed by belonging to a common story and practicing the rituals. Telling the story and practicing the ritual is how one generation gives identity to the next generation. Stories and rituals are how we get our roots that ground us in common reality and support. Now, let me be quick to say, there are bad stories and bad rituals out there that are formative. And if you believe those bad stories and practice those bad rituals, they will shape and form you to death. But there is a story about who we are. And there are rituals that rehearse who we are. That if we can find our way into them as a gift given to us, it will change the very nature of our life. So today I want to tell you 3 stories. Story number 1. When our daughters were young, we would take vacations. We liked to go to the Great Smoky Mountains. It was one of our favorite spots to go. And it was cheap. I mean, we had no money, so we were able to get a family vacation there on the cheap. I remember the year that we went from Gatlinburg, Tennessee, across the mountain to Cherokee, North Carolina, where the Cherokee Indian tribe still lives to this day. I was very interested in the Cherokee Indian story because my grandmother is part Cherokee, and I've got a little bit of Cherokee blood in me. And these are people. This is my tribe. And I wanted my daughters to know more about the Cherokee Indians, so we went there. And that evening, we went to an outdoor theater where the Cherokee Indians performed Unto These Hills. Unto These Hills is a drama of the Cherokee Indians during the time that President Andrew Jackson, who is our Tennessee president, I mean, you go out to the Hermitage and see where he lived and where he's buried and all kind of historic stuff out there. But Andrew Jackson decided, in somewhat of a backhanded way, that he wanted the Cherokees' territory. And so through government force, they were evicted from their land in the Great Smoky Mountains, and they were force marched all the way to Oklahoma. Imagine taking that hike, Cherokee, North Carolina, to the middle of Oklahoma. So many Cherokee Indians died on that trip that it was called the Trail of Tears. And so the Cherokee Indians wanted their children to remember that story as a part of their identity. So they created that outdoor drama, Unto These Hills. And decade after decade after decade, now generations, children are playing the parts that their grandparents played or their parents played. But that story is kept alive. Here's a little preview of Unto These Hills. And listen carefully to what this old Indian is saying.
This is what I was told when I was young. The story of my people, the Cherokee. Unto these hills. This is where we fought and sacrificed to preserve what was most sacred. Our people, our land, our history. Join us.
Wait for it. Did you hear what he said? This is a story I was told when I was a child. And here, on this sacred land, they wear the clothes, they say the lines, and they reenact the story. Because the Cherokee Indians believe that life is too hard for the next generation to create themselves. So by this drama, they tell them who they are. This beautiful story of people who have come through oppression and live to be in this place. Sacred stories and rituals and places and practices are how they give their children a great future. They don't say, go figure it out yourself. They tell them who they are. Story number 2. If you go to 221 Fifth Avenue in downtown Nashville, you can eat at a historic lunch counter at Woolworth's. Now, Woolworth's has this lunch counter where you can sit and order milkshakes and hamburgers and hot dogs and all kind of stuff. It was a popular eatery in Nashville, downtown, back in the 1960s for everybody except African Americans. They were not allowed to go in and sit down and order a meal because of the color of their skin. 1960. And then one day, African Americans from Fisk University and the American Baptist College and Tennessee State University decided to go eat at the lunch counter. Similar to Rosa Parks taking a seat on the bus, their lunch counter sit-in became a sacred story. Having the white skin that I do, I think I need to yield to a wonderful man named Bernard Lafayette Jr. and allow him to tell you that story. Let's watch.
My name is Bernard Lafayette Jr., and I graduated from American Baptist College in Nashville. And that's where I got involved in the movement. John Lewis, who was my roommate at the time, decided that he was going to get involved in these workshops and to start this training in nonviolence. John Lewis said that this is something you would be interested in. So why don't you come? And when I went, I got completely motivated. I was actually the coordinator of the first sit-in that the students had in Nashville. So I was like the observer and the coordinator until the students were pulled off the stools and arrested in Nashville. I think it was at Cressy's. And what happened is they arrested the white student, brought the black students out of the store, and then locked the door behind them. And when that happened, that meant that the black students were standing on the sidewalk, and they arrested Paul LaPrade, who was a white student. They beat him up because they were more resentful towards whites who were involved. And so we had to figure out a way to get back in that store and get back on the stools. I felt very good about the fact that we were persistent and that we were not going to allow this white student to get arrested alone, because that was the whole idea, is that we were going to stick together as a group. And once we got arrested, students heard about it from all over the city at different colleges and universities. Tennessee State University, Fisk University, American Baptist College, the word got out and they came down in droves. The thing that was different about our group was the fact that our professor was the president of the chapter of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference there, Nashville Christian Leadership Council, Reverend Kelly Miller Smith, Sr. So we had really good support from our university, our school, American Baptist College. There's no question about it. So it was a thing to do. We were not criticized, we were not threatened with being, put out of school and that kind of thing, etc. So we're in the right climate. And so that made all the difference in the world, the kind of adult support that we got as students. And they used to have mass meetings to raise money, that kind of thing. That's how we had the money to go on the freedom rides. We educated people. So that's what the demonstrations were about. It was not agitation. It was education, consciousness raising, awareness, helping people realize that the goals that we were trying to accomplish was not antithetical to their own well-being. All people.
Do you feel the generations telling us, this is our story, this happened in our city, this is who we are? That very lunch counter is now preserved as a historic site and a functioning restaurant. You can go there today and eat, and you will see the pictures on the wall, and you will sit in the very same place that these African American students sat and were arrested for violating laws that were racially biased. The building has pictures and icons and memories. We can go there today. It's why yesterday we remembered Martin Luther King Jr., why we told his stories, why many of us sat and read again the letter from a Birmingham jail, why we marched to sites and heard the message of nonviolence and equality, and why we served somebody. Because sacred stories and rituals and places and practices are how a future gets passed on to African Americans and to the children of social justice. We don't say, go figure it out yourself. We tell the stories and practice the rituals as a means of telling you who you are. The third story. The children of Abraham had been down in Egypt as slaves under old Pharaoh, and God had said to Moses, go tell Pharaoh, I said, let my people go. And Moses went, and God brought them through the Red Sea, across on dry ground, out into the wilderness, and there at Mount Sinai, God gave them the law, the Ten Commandments, and entered into covenant with them. These were the children of Abraham that had been promised the Canaan land. This was their land, and yet they had been evicted from it for hundreds of years now. And so here they go across the wilderness. Yet, there is a generation that grows up that is not able to claim the promise of God. And so they grumble and disobey and gripe out in the wilderness for about 40 years until Moses dies and a new leader named Joshua is raised. I love how the guys from the Bible Project cartooned that story for us. Listen to how this Joshua story gets to us from the Bible Project.
The book of Joshua. Let's back up and remember the story so far. So God chose Abraham, and then his family became the people of Israel, who are then enslaved down in Egypt. And so through Moses, God rescued Israel out of Egypt. He made a covenant with them at Mount Sinai, and he brought them through the wilderness. So Israel then camped outside the promised land, and Moses called them to obey God's commands so that they could show all the other nations what God is like. The book of Joshua picks up right after Moses has died and Israel's ready to enter the land. So the story of Joshua is designed with four main movements. Joshua first leads Israel into the promised land, and then once they're there, they meet all this hostility from the Canaanites, and so they engage them in battle. Then after their victories, Joshua divides up the promised land as the inheritance for the 12 tribes, and then the book concludes with these final speeches that Joshua gives to the people. So let's dive in and we'll see how all of it flows together. The first section begins with Moses' death, and Joshua is appointed as Israel's new leader. And the author intentionally presents Joshua as a new Moses. So like Moses, Joshua calls the people to obey the Torah, which means the covenant commands that they were given at Mount Sinai. And then Joshua sends spies into the land, just as Moses did back in Numbers chapters 13 and 14, except it goes way better this time. In fact, even some Canaanites turn and follow the God of Israel. Joshua then leads all Israel across the Jordan River and into the land. Just like the sea parted for Moses in the Exodus, so here the river Jordan parts and the priests carry the Ark of the Covenant across, leading all Israel with them. Now,
and that's a story that was read to us by Lena this morning. I love this. Here they are. They're camped on this side, and here's the Jordan River out here, and there's the Promised Land, and there's the forbidding city of Jericho with its walls standing over there. And they're on this side. And following the instruction of God, the priests go ahead of all of the children of Abraham, and the priests are carrying the Ark of the Covenant. It's this chest about the size of this table that they carry on these long poles so that they can put them up on their shoulders. And this chest contains the Ten Commandments and other memories of their time in the wilderness. And it is symbolic of the presence of God that has gone with them everywhere they've gone. And so the priests go right across the middle of that, carrying this first with all the people behind them. Well, when the first priest gets to the edge of the Jordan and his toe touches the water, just as happened with Moses and the Red Sea, the water just piles up in a wall and the bottom of the riverbed is dry. And the priests make their way down into the bottom of the riverbed, and they stop there while all the children of Abraham go past them and march to the other side that's there. When they get to the other side, Joshua says, I want you to choose one member from each of the 12 tribes, go back down in the riverbed and get a stone and bring it out. And so 12 men go down and they pick up a stone and they bring it out. And once they bring it out, then the priests of God make their way on out of the riverbed. And as soon as they get to dry ground, the wall of water drops, the Jordan flows, and it overflows once again. And there they are with their 12 stones. They take those 12 stones to Gilgal, where they camp that night before they press on to take the land that God has promised for them. And they build an altar with those 12 stones right there. And I love verse 21 of Joshua 4. It says this, when your children ask you in years to come, What do these 12 stones mean? What do these stones mean? Then you're to tell them, Israel crossed over the Jordan right here on dry ground. The Lord dried up the Jordan for you. He's not saying for your descendants. He's saying for you. They're a part of this story. For you to cross over just as he did for the Israelites at the Red Sea. So that you may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, and so that you may reverence the Lord your God forever. Now, this is what I love. This is where biblical scholarship just makes Scripture even richer than what it is on the surface. You might think this is a story that's being written for the people that crossed over that day. Well, the truth is, these texts came into written form probably 500 years later. These stories have been told for 500 years. And it's 500 years later that someone begins to tell this story. These are the days of King Josiah. And in the land that Israel 500 years ago conquered and God gave it to them, in that land, all of a sudden, pagan practices are beginning to rise again, and people are being disobedient to the law. And what do? They tell the story to the next generation as a way of saying, this is who we are. We are people who disobeyed God in a wilderness and wandered there for 40 years. Until there were those who were courageous enough to cross over the Jordan and go into the land that God has promised and live according to the commands of God. And they tell this story and they practice this ritual and they go back to this sacred site and they explain these 12 stones and this altar that is built as a way of saying, this is who we are. And they remembered that in this way. So here we are in 2020. Our culture tells us, be unique. Define yourself. Make your mark. Leave your scent. Go into the world and be somebody like nobody has ever seen before. And what that has done, it has shaped our souls so that when people who love us try to tell us who we are, something rises in us and says, nobody's going to tell me who I am. And that, my friends, is the seed of death. That, my friends, is the essence of sin and rebellion against our Creator. When we determine, I will make my own identity. I will not receive my identity as a gift. I will create myself. Life is too hard for us to create ourselves. The world is shaping us in a way that we only choose to pay attention to what fits within the universe we are building around ourselves. So here we are. I've asked the questions. My children have asked the questions. My grandchildren are now asking the questions. And we all ask them, why do we go to church? Why do we dip bread in grape juice? Why does a university center its schedule around chapel services? Why do we tell these ancient stories and read these ancient words? Why do we recite the Apostles' Creed and pray the Lord's Prayer? Why do we light a Christ candle and have spiritual deepening week? You do know what we're saying, don't you? What do these stones mean? I think I know. All of this means that God, through those who love us, that this God is telling us who we are. This God knows that life is too hard for us to create ourselves. And so, in this world of rabid individualism and identity making, we are radical enough to believe that our identity is not something unique that we can create from scratch, but that it is a gift given to us by the God who made us and formed us and shaped us in our mother's womb. And the only way that we will ever become fully human is when our Creator tells us who we are. And everything within us says, yes, that's it. That's who I am. There are bad stories and bad rituals out there and people saying this is who you are and this is what you need to do. And they will destroy us. But there is another story. The story of our Creator and our Maker, our Redeemer and our friend. And the story that comes from this God is the only one that every cell in the human body can say yes to in a way that lets us know who we are. In a world of loneliness and anxiety and depression, one thing is a given. You really can know who you are because we have a God that's telling us who we are. I want to invite our worship team to come. And do we have time to sing that last song? Okay. I want us to sing this together. It's an old song, but I think most of you know it. And this morning, as we sing this together, I just want you to measure your own heart. In my heart, is there a spirit of nobody tells me who I am? Or is there a spirit of God, only you can tell me who I am? Is there a spirit of I will create myself? Or is there a spirit of I will be who God has created me to be? Is there a spirit of I'll do this if I die? Or is there a spirit of I'll do this so that I can live? Those are choices that we have to make about stories and rituals. Because the truth is, life is too hard for us to create ourselves. Let's stand and sing together this closing song. As always, if you'd like to talk with God about this morning, these altars are open.
Thanks for joining us for chapel today. Be sure to check back every Tuesday and Thursday for our next gathering.